A lot of you are against 𝐬𝐬. I know that you're against 𝐬𝐬. Some of you were even telling me to remove 𝐬𝐬. The thing is with 𝐬𝐬, that I think people are misunderstanding, is that yes, did 𝐬𝐬 abuse Chamber? Yes. I've got news for you though. Everyone else had the chance to abuse Chamber as well. And they did. And you know what? None of them even came close to how good 𝐬𝐬 was.
Tags with a great now for it. 𝐬𝐬 though. Whoa! 𝐬𝐬! Big play!
None of them even came close. 𝐬𝐬 did not go negative for an entire year.
𝐬𝐬's not finding too much with the tour de force in hand. Ooh, as I say that! What is this?
𝐬𝐬 was an amazing player, and over the past few months, I spent over 100 hours studying his mechanics from when he was in his prime. And I broke down every microscopic detail to try to figure out how 𝐬𝐬's level of dominance was even possible. In this video, I'm going to share everything that I learned, starting with some of his well-known mechanical traits, and towards the end of the video, covering features in his gunplay that I guarantee have never been analyzed before. Starting off with his most well-known trait, solid fundamentals. Yes, even though every tier 1 pro has these, 𝐬𝐬 did this at a very high level, so before going into anything unique about 𝐬𝐬, let's quickly cover his fundamentals. First, let's talk about his raw aim. So 𝐬𝐬's raw aim is good for a Radiant player, but if we're being honest, it's nothing out of the ordinary for a tier 1 player. Anyone could tell you that 𝐬𝐬 wasn't mechanically dominant due to his mouse control. It was good, but when watching 𝐬𝐬, it's definitely not what stands out. Next up, 𝐬𝐬's movement. Similar to his aim, 𝐬𝐬's movement was simply at the Radiant level. One unique tendency here is how he at times lengthens his strafes to give himself more time to hit a wider flick. His movement isn't the greatest by any means, but it's more than enough to hang with the best in the world. Now, actually getting into the good stuff, his crosshair placement. We all know that what really starts to set 𝐬𝐬 apart is his crosshair placement. His crosshair placement wasn't just at the Radiant level or even the tier 1 level. 𝐬𝐬's crosshair placement was world class, and honestly, I think that he was years ahead of the scene. If you were watching 𝐬𝐬's streams from when he was with Optic, you would know that his level of crosshair placement wasn't replicable by anyone else at the time. If you looked around for even highlights of other players, you basically wouldn't find anyone clearing angles as methodically as 𝐬𝐬. This is the core of what made 𝐬𝐬's domination possible, and you'll be hearing about it a lot throughout the rest of this video. Now, the final part of fundamentals in my opinion is gun control, and at the surface level, 𝐬𝐬's gun control isn't anything special. Just like literally every other mechanical player in Valorant history, he burst fires. But combined with his exceptional precision and first bullet accuracy, the fact that 𝐬𝐬 never committed to an unnecessary spray allowed him to get multi-kills without losing control over his Vandal. I think we get it by now. He had strong fundamentals, which is completely expected from any pro player. So what made 𝐬𝐬 so special?
Yeah.
There are honestly dozens of differences that I can think of, and I could talk about them for hours, but the most obvious one is 𝐬𝐬's use of tracing and emphasis on smoothness. In these clips where 99% of other pros would pre-aim each angle through the wall with short and fast peaks, 𝐬𝐬 opts to trace the edge of the angle instead. If you don't already know, tracing is the act of keeping your crosshair on the edge of the angle while peeking. The reason that it's so powerful is because it gives you a guarantee that your crosshair will overlap with your enemy's head for at least a few milliseconds. Now, a lot of pros trace angles differently. I've been watching 𝐁𝐮𝐬𝐢 and 𝐸𝐽𝐺 recently, and I noticed that when they trace, their crosshair stutters along the edge of the wall. But when it comes to 𝐬𝐬, he's almost obsessed with making sure that his crosshair never skips or jitters. Visually, this level of smoothness is beautiful, but in reality, it doesn't really achieve anything differently from its stuttery counterpart. The reason 𝐬𝐬 peaked like this is because he was comfortable doing so, and it looked aesthetic as fuck. Maybe it was like a form of self-expression, an artist's signature on his masterpiece. 𝐬𝐬 wasn't just tapping heads, he was composing, every bullet a brushstroke, every round a canvas. He was telling the world that no, he didn't need snappy flicks, he didn't need speed. Everyone he faced was a pawn in his grand design, mere spectator. Anyways, yeah, I thought this part of his crosshair placement was pretty cool. Now, this part of the video is where we're going to start exploring the more uncharted waters of 𝐬𝐬's mechanics, starting with his angle holding. players such as Permy base their holding depth on reaction time in order to hold most angles at a consistent distance. You can see that Permy often kills opponents that are swinging him while they are moving, and it results in his clips looking like he's literally trigger botting. The speed this brings is incredible, but it's hard to do this consistently. Now, on the contrary, 𝐬𝐬 kept it simple, predicting where the opponent would stop to fire and holding that exact spot. The downside of this is that the opponent would have a chance to shoot, but the upside is the extreme consistency that this style allows for. Honestly, practicing this is pretty simple, and I highly recommend in deathmatches holding based off where you think the opponent will stop. You'll find that based off of their footsteps, you're easily going to be able to predict where they're going to stop and just tap their head. In a ranked match, it is a bit more complicated, but certain util will obviously be indicators of a wide swing, such as a flash. And if you hear nothing, you can hold a bit tighter because you can tell that they're contacting space. This next section of the video is dedicated to how 𝐬𝐬 prioritized his comfort over what was optimal even at the highest level. The goal of this segment is to just inspire you as a player not to overthink every little thing coaches or YouTube guides might tell you. Sure, mechanics might have its solved objective truths, but comfort will always be a factor in deciding how you want to play. The first thing I want to talk about is something I'm going to call wall hack tracing. It's something I've noticed almost every pro doing, but I'm not sure if it's lazy or optimal. So if you're watching pros consistently, you'll find that there are moments where they're not pre-aiming and they're not tracing the angle. What they're doing instead is tracing a position through a wall. Now, I know this sounds completely stupid if you're like actually a good player, but to me and maybe some of the people watching this video, this is going to seem pretty weird. I think the idea here is that all of these pros, and 𝐬𝐬 especially, are confident in their intuition. This means that they can skip angles because they know that they're already cleared even without any information. Now, you could argue that this is technically lazy because they very well could play in these positions, but all of the pros at the highest level are doing this, and I'm not actually sure what to think. If you know what you're talking about, just feel free to leave a comment and let me and the boys know what the fuck is going on. Another thing that 𝐬𝐬 did that could be considered suboptimal is his usage of ADS. We all know that ADSing slows your velocity down, and we also know that when peaking, you want your velocity to be maximized. But what if I told you that 𝐬𝐬 and even other pros peak with ADS all the time? And no, this isn't just during long distance fights where the extra zoom actually helps a lot. Even in mid-range fights, Radiant players will peak with ADS. And the only real reason for this is pure comfort. Yeah, it literally just feels better. I don't know if this is an equivalent exchange, but what they're doing is trading their velocity for more precision. And just like with wall hack tracing, I actually have no idea if this is good or not. It really goes to show that even though mechanics feels like an objective thing, there's so much subjectivity to it. And the last thing in this section is going to be 𝐬𝐬's tracing. The basic idea of tracing is that you should only do it when you have an angle advantage. If you have angle disadvantage, you should try to even out the disadvantage by peaking with your maximum velocity. And tracing slightly lowers your perceived velocity. But the thing is, I've seen 𝐬𝐬 take gunfights tracing where he definitely shouldn't be, and he's always come out on top. Honestly, if you're comfortable tracing certain angles, I don't think it's too big of a deal, seeing as 𝐬𝐬 is able to do this in Radiant without getting punished for it. So I don't think that your plat enemies are going to fucking kill you because you're tracing the angle instead of pre-aiming it. Again, I'm not encouraging you to do what is suboptimal. Just understand that your comfort does have a factor in what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Like 𝐬𝐬 has these three things that I've mentioned in his mechanics. You have Prod doing backflips in Immortal. And you have Sinatra with a 20% headshot rate that has been dominating Radiant for years. Play the video game how you want to play it, man. It's not that deep. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.